Have you ever heard of Ronald Read? He worked as a janitor and quietly built a fortune of $8 million by the time he passed away in 2014. Yes, really, a janitor. And no, he didn't hit the lottery or receive a big inheritance. He simply saved money consistently over many years and let the power of compounding do the heavy lifting. The lesson here is simple but powerful. How you handle money often matters more than how smart you are. You don't need a degree from Harvard or a high-powered job on Wall Street to become wealthy. What truly counts is consistent, sensible behavior. As Morgan Housel explains, financial success isn't about mastering complex formulas. It's about behavior. It's a soft skill, where your habits and decisions matter more than your knowledge. So spend the next 10 to 15 minutes with this video, and you might strengthen that skill. This is a breakdown of the 5 most important lessons from the book, The Psychology of Money. And you're watching The Swedish Investor, bringing you practical ideas and tools to help you move closer to financial independence through stock market investing. Let's start with takeaway number 1. Pay the price. Imagine you want to buy a stylish new watch. You walk into a store and look around. You're searching for something that stands out, something that will impress your friends and maybe even your partner. Now you have 2 choices. You can pay for the watch, or you can grab it and run, trusting your cardio to save you. Most likely, you'd choose to pay. No matter how fast you are, you'd swipe your card and do things the right way. Because you understand something important. Anything valuable comes with a price, and investing is no different. If you've watched videos on this channel before, you've probably noticed some recurring ideas behind high returns. One of them is holding a relatively concentrated portfolio, although investors like Peter Lynch sometimes took a different approach. But concentration comes with a trade-off: volatility. That's the price you pay for the chance of higher long-term returns. If you can't handle seeing your net worth drop by 20% in a single week, maybe because a couple of your main holdings report disappointing earnings, then chasing maximum returns may not be for you. Because in most cases, higher potential returns come with higher emotional costs. Let's say that 10 years ago, you clearly saw the bright future of Netflix. You decided to invest a large portion of your wealth into it. Today, you'd likely be very wealthy. But here's the real question. Could you have handled the journey? During that time, Netflix went through several major downturns. In 2011 alone, the company lost a significant number of subscribers, and the stock dropped by about 80% from its peak in the months that followed. Imagine watching your portfolio collapse like that. What would you tell your family? Would you stay confident or start to panic? Would you still believe in your decision? This might sound like an extreme example, but even with a more balanced strategy, volatility is unavoidable. Let's take a broader case. Suppose you invested in an S&P 500 index fund back in 1980. Even then, you would have faced around 13 years combined, where your portfolio was down at least 20% from its previous highs. And for about 8 months, it would have been down as much as 50%. That's not easy to endure. Yes, the stock market is one of the most powerful tools for building wealth. Few alternatives come close, but it's important to stay honest with yourself. It's not free. Every investor faces ups and downs, and if you want the rewards, you have to accept the cost. Volatility isn't a bug. It's the price of a better financial future. Takeaway number 2, never enough. There's a fascinating pattern in how people react to money. Give someone a $2 million bonus, and they'll feel amazing, at least for a moment. But as soon as they discover that someone else received 2.1 million, that satisfaction disappears, and frustration takes its place. That's the double-edged nature of capitalism. It's incredibly effective at creating wealth, but it's just as effective at creating envy. The desire to outperform others, your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends, can push you to work harder and aim higher. And in many ways, that drive can be a positive force. It can make you more productive and help you pursue meaningful goals. But there's a downside. Constant comparison can trap you in a mindset where nothing ever feels like enough. Let's put this into perspective. To be in the top 1% of income earners in the United States, you need to make roughly $500,000 a year. Imagine someone like Bill, a highly skilled doctor earning at that level. By most standards, Bill is wealthy. He enjoys a comfortable lifestyle. Nice cars, luxurious vacations, maybe even outsourcing tasks he doesn't enjoy. For a long time, Bill feels proud of what he's accomplished. But then something changes. He buys a vacation home in the Hamptons and meets his neighbor, Stan. Stan operates on a completely different level. He's a CEO of a major public company, earning around $10 million per year. Suddenly, Bill's success doesn't feel quite as impressive anymore. But surely Stan must feel satisfied, right? Not really. Stan happens to know Michael Jordan, one of the greatest athletes of all time, with a fortune in the billions. Compared to that, Stan's income starts to look small, and it doesn't stop there. Even someone like Michael occasionally finds himself in rooms with people like Jeff Bezos, whose wealth reaches levels that are almost hard to comprehend. At that scale, even billions can feel ordinary. There's always someone ahead, always a bigger number, always a higher level. And chasing that endless ladder can lead people into dangerous territory. Throughout history, this kind of comparison-driven pressure has pushed individuals to make reckless decisions. Some have taken extreme financial risks, borrowing heavily just to climb higher, only to lose everything. Others have crossed legal lines, acting on insider information and destroying both their careers and their reputations. And in many cases, people sacrifice what truly matters: their relationships, their peace of mind, their time, all in pursuit of just a little more. If you continue learning about investing and building wealth, there's a good chance you'll reach a level of financial freedom that most people only dream about. But at some point, you have to draw a line. You have to decide what enough means for you. Because the goal isn't to trade away what you truly need for something you don't actually need, even if it looks appealing. Takeaway number 3. Crazy is in the eye of the beholder. At first glance, people's financial behavior can seem irrational. Some spend huge amounts on things that appear completely unnecessary. Others take the opposite route and avoid spending altogether, even hiding cash instead of investing it. But here's the key idea. Everyone's decisions make sense to them. People grow up in different environments. They have different experiences, different influences, different levels of education. All of this shapes how they think about money. So what looks irrational from the outside might feel perfectly reasonable from the inside. As Morgan Housel explains in his book, The Psychology of Money, our financial choices are deeply personal. Take lottery tickets as an example. In the United States, lower-income households spend over $400 per year on the lottery, about 4 times more than higher-income households. At first, that might seem illogical, but when you look deeper, it starts to make sense. For someone with limited financial opportunities, a lottery ticket isn't just a bad investment. It's a small chance at a completely different life, and that perspective changes everything. Now combine that with another reality. More than a third of Americans can't come up with $400 in an emergency. So what does it look like from the outside? It might seem like these same people are spending money they don't have on lottery tickets. At first glance, that sounds irrational, but take a step back and try to see the world through their eyes. Many of them live paycheck to paycheck, with little or no room to save. Opportunities can be limited. Education might not have opened the right doors. Career paths may feel uncertain or stuck. A comfortable vacation, out of reach. A new car, not realistic. Helping their children through college without heavy debt? Nearly impossible. So what does a lottery ticket represent? It's not just a gamble. It's a small piece of hope. It's a way to buy into a dream, the kind of life that others already live. And when you look at it that way, their behavior doesn't seem so irrational anymore. Now, how does this make you a better investor? First, it reminds you that people are different, and once you truly accept that, you become less tempted to blindly copy someone else's strategy. Because what works for them might not work for you. For example, your risk tolerance could be much higher than that of a billionaire. Why? Because you're still in the phase of building wealth, not just preserving it. A billionaire is focused on staying rich. You might be focused on getting there. So copying their portfolio might actually hold you back instead of helping you move forward. Understanding differences also makes it easier to say no. No to investments that fall outside your circle of competence. Take GameStop as an example. If you're not a trader, jumping into that kind of situation may not make sense at all. Sometimes the smartest move is simply not to play. When you recognize that people see the world through different lenses, it becomes easier to stay grounded. You stop chasing changing paths and start focusing on your own. And that's where better decisions begin. Takeaway number 4, peekaboo. Think about events like the Great Depression, World War II, the 2008 financial crisis, or the COVID-19 pandemic. What do they all have in common? They changed the world. They had massive effects on financial markets. And most importantly, they were incredibly hard to predict. Nassim Nicholas Taleb describes events like these as black swans. A black swan has 3 defining features. First, it's an outlier, something so rare that past events don't really prepare us for it. Second, it has a huge impact. And third, after it happens, people come up with explanations that make it seem obvious in hindsight. That's the trick our minds play on us. We look back and convince ourselves that we should have seen it coming all along. But in reality, we didn't. Imagine it's the day of the Black Monday. Markets are collapsing. In just a few hours, nearly a quarter of the market's value disappears. What would you do in that moment? Would you panic and join the crowd shouting, "Sell, sell"? Or would you stay calm? Maybe even invest more, using cash you had prepared in advance. Here's something to think about. If you had invested in the S&P 500 20 years ago, but missed just the 4 best-performing days in the market, your return would drop from 291% to 164%. That's a massive difference. And it shows how dangerous it can be to step in and out of the market based on fear. The key lesson here is simple. Instead of trying to predict disasters, prepare for them. You're far better off building the mental strength and financial stability to survive unexpected events than hoping you'll outsmart everyone else when chaos hits. Stop relying on bold macro predictions. The events that will truly shake the market in the future are, by definition, the ones no one sees coming. Takeaway number 5, the seduction of pessimism. Imagine I start listing reasons why the market might crash this year. I mention rising government debt, concerns about inflation from stimulus spending, maybe even fears of a new wave of global uncertainty. Chances are you'd lean in, you'd listen closely. You might even start to feel uneasy about the future. Now imagine the opposite. I talk about rising life expectancy, cheaper and more efficient renewable energy, explosive growth in technology and computing power. Most people would just nod and move on. It's not as gripping. Why is that? As Daniel Kahneman explains in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, our brains are wired to pay more attention to potential losses than to possible gains. From an evolutionary perspective, that made sense. Those who reacted quickly to danger were more likely to survive. And that instinct still shapes how we think today. We naturally give more weight to negative news. But there's another reason too. Progress is slow. Setbacks are fast. Positive change usually takes years, sometimes decades. It's gradual and often hard to notice day by day. But crises? They happen quickly. They're dramatic. They grab attention. And because of that, negative stories are easier to tell and much more engaging to hear. Optimism, on the other hand, requires patience. It asks you to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. And that can feel less exciting, even if it's more accurate. Understanding this bias can help you make better decisions. When you notice yourself drawn to pessimistic views, take a step back. Ask whether it's truly rational or just your instincts reacting. As Hans Rosling often said, the world is better than we think. So let's bring it all together. You won't build wealth in the stock market without accepting volatility. That's the price. Envy can quietly destroy good decisions if you let it. Never risk what you truly need for something you simply want. Different people act differently because they see the world differently. Don't try to predict every crisis. Prepare yourself to endure them. And remember, pessimism will always sound smarter than optimism. But that doesn't mean it is. That's it for today. But this is just a glimpse of the ideas from Morgan Housel. If you want to go deeper, his book, The Psychology of Money, is absolutely worth your time. And if you're curious to learn more about how psychology shapes your financial decisions, there's plenty more to explore next. See you in the next one.